I'm Jahfar Shareef, and I am doing PhD under the side. So I'm asked to give a lecture to you on myth, media, and myth, meaning, and media. So this is the general, I think, the larger theme that you have been given lecture these days. So I'll be focusing on Muslims. So first I will be talking certain the notions of past of Muslims in South Asia, and then I'll be shifting into certain conceptual dichotomies that is pertinent in the understanding of certain anthropological traditions. Then I'll be giving you some examples of some recent studies and recent trend of studying South Asian Muslims, and I'll be summing up. So my lecture is very simple. I'm not at all discussing some very complex and very recent thing. I'm giving a very basic levels of understanding to you. First of all, I want to give you some. I need some. I want to know some of you like please introduce the idea of sacred. Do you have any idea of sacred? You might have gone through some lectures on religion and art, so you might have been introduced the idea of sacred, the study of religion, especially Durkheimian notions of sacred and profane. In elementary forms of religious lives, the similar texts of Durkheim. Some of you, please, the idea of sacred, anybody can. No need of stand up, please say something. I want to make the lecture more interactive. Please, some of you, please, anybody, anything can, no problem, even if it is wrong. Yes, please.
Sacred is something which transcends everyday life. It's something which is meant to be holy or somewhere.
Yeah, holy. He said the word holy, and some of you in another concept regarding the idea of sacred.
Something that's forbidden and distanced.
Yes, forbidden. We got holy, forbidden, and some more idea. I think you might be knowing, please. They are right in a way. Holy and forbidden. Something held high. Like generally, I think there is no definite, essential definition of sacred. But they are right as they say that holy and sacred. Sacred is holy, forbidden. There are so many meanings as like the idea of the study of sacred has been, like there are so many scholars, they have extensively written on sacred. So we don't have a definite idea of sacred that runs through other scholars. So in the idea of sacred is the study of religion. I think generally there are two broad lines of definition have been advanced. One substantial and other is situational. One is substantial and the other is situational. The substantial is that the substantivist approach the poetics of sacred. That is known as the poetics of sacred. The sacred has been identified as uncanny, awesome, powerful manifestation of reality, full of ultimate significance. The substantivist notion of sacred, I think it understands, it conceptualizes the idea of sacred in a way like it is a kind of manifestation of something real, something uncanny, real, holy thing in a particular space. Like people that give some reverence and piety towards to them. Then they incorporate a lot of meanings in their everyday life. It can be temples, masjid, and anywhere. In this notion of sacred, sacred is given. Sacred is essential. Sacred is unmuted, not constructed, but rather given and essential. This is the early debates in anthropology. One of the early debates in anthropology. As per this notion, sacred is given, essential, and transcendental. It leaves the sacred erupted, manifested, or appear in a certain places causing them to become powerful centers of meaningful work. So, could you say some examples on this notion of sacred? For example, Mecca, Medina, any more? Temples, any temples, sacred is there. For people, sacred is there. People visit for a kind of feeling, for a kind of reverence, for a kind of piety. They get there when they visit those places. So there are certain acts are prohibited in those places. People associate their everyday life with those spaces. For example, some kind of people keep the photos of those places in their rooms, in their houses, everywhere. You can see images of idols, of tiny idols everywhere in India. You visit an office. It's not like the dichotomy of sacred and profane, but you can see the notions of sacred everywhere. Like people keep some kind of special meaning to those things. By this notion of sacred is given, sacred is essential, sacred is unmuted. This notion of sacred is, I think, these theories that deals sacred as essential and substantial, known as poetics of sacred. As per the politics of its construction, contestation always been a subtext. These thinkers, they don't focus on the ways of sacred constructed. It's interlinked with politics, economics, other dynamics, social dynamics. They don't focus on the ways of sacred. This is the major criticism against these theoretical stand. So examples of scholars, Mircea Eliade, Walter Lew, Rudolf Otto, etc. You can please write down these names so you can get more ideas about this theoretical understanding of sacred. As per this, sacred is essential, substantial. I am repeating for this is a very basic concept. So as MS students, you should understand these very elementary levels of debate. Next, the situational approach, the politics of sacred. For them, the sacred is not given. Contrary to the earlier thinkers, for them, sacred is not given. The post-structuralist understanding of sacred comes into this stand of these ways of conceptualizing sacred. So for them, sacred is not given, sacred is not substantial, sacred is not beyond mutation. So sacred is nothing more or less than a notional supplement to the ongoing cultural work of sacralizing space, time, persons, and social relations. Situational relations sacred is byproduct of this work of sacralization. They focus on the idea of sacralization. This is a process. Sacred is nothing given. Somewhere else, sacred is not given, sacred, but it's made out of human agency. It's a product of human agency. So comparing with the alien notion of sacred, this idea of sacred is very different. It's very recent theoretical conceptualization of sacred. So we have two ideas of sacred, broad idea of sacred. So if you have any confusion, you can ask me about this thing. Sacred is given, not substantial, but made out of human agency. Human agency is given a primary importance in this conceptualization. But other conceptualization, which is sacred as substantial, human agency is not given a primary importance. So this is the major difference between these two theoretical strands. So you understood what is the difference? Yes? Clear? Anybody have confusion? So I was saying there are two strands of theoretical conceptualization of sacred. One is substantial, the other is situational. The substantial focus on understand sacred as given in a place. They are not looking more the agency of human act the ways of sacred is constructed. They are not focusing on the process of sacred is made, but they take sacred as granted. They are not focusing the process of sacralization, but they focus the product of the process. Not focusing the process, but the product only. The politics of construction and contestation always been a main text here, not a subtext. In earlier conceptualization, it was a subtext, but here it is a main text. Human agency is more focused. The thinkers in this time mainly Claude Lévi-Strauss, Emile Durkheim, and David Chichester and Edward Lenin. Here the constitutive relationship, subject, object, process, and practices. So the recent thinkers, more often the studies are focusing, they are taking this frame of conceptualizing sacred. Because they articulate more the conceptual relationship, subject, object, process, and practices. Everything is made, constructed. The constructive turn in the sociology and anthropology is very evident, very apparent here. So now I already introduced the concept of the differences of the idea of sacred, ways of conceptualization. So now I shift into the main discussion of this lecture, Islam as a discussing tradition. So the idea of sacred in Islam. What is Islam? Some of you places it's just a religion, but you may, as a sociology student, you may have some nuances about that than the layman understanding of religion. So I have summed up the Islam as just like it's a theological metaphysical discourse, legalistic discourse, mystical discourse, and philosophical discourse. I have summed up these 4 levels of discourse. There are 4 levels of discourse in Islam mainly. It's a theological metaphysical discourse. It has a legalistic discourse. It has a mystical discourse, and it has a philosophical discourse. So, theological metaphysical discourse. There are two main discourses in classical Sunni theology. I think you already know about the difference between Shia and Sunni. Should I repeat that? The Shia and Sunni debate, it's emerged just out after the death of Prophet Muhammad. After the death of Prophet Muhammad, there was a great confusion among his companions about who going to be the leader of the community. So some of them argued that no, the prophets, I think the criteria should be very democratic, it should be open to everybody. There is another major group, they think this prophet and his blood is sacred. Somebody from his family should be the leader. This was the very fundamental perennial discussion. So Shias, they argued that it should be someone from the family of the prophet. Sunnis, they argued that no, it's someone should be not necessarily someone from his family, but it should be open to everyone. So then the community split about this leadership, and the Shias, they argued for this someone in the family of Prophet. And the Sunnis, they stood for somebody from, not essentially from the family of the Prophet. So the community split, and then there is a sect of Sunni and Shia. This is the basic debate. So in classical theology of Islam, there is 2 major theological discussions, Ash'arite and Maturidiyya. The Ash'arite, I'm not supposed to discuss all these things as we are running out of time only. So I won't give you more details, it's not very important because it's very in-depth, detailed discussion of something which is not very relevant for you. So the Ash'arite and Maturidiyya. Ash'arite, they are focusing more on like the reason can't be a primary analytical constituent in the debate of Islamic theology. But the Maturidiyya, they argued that it should be reason also, but reason, revelation also important. The difference is that Ash'arite put more importance on revelation and Sunnah, the tradition of the Prophet. But Maturidiyya, they argued that Reason can be, and especially the tradition also. It's a mixer up of both. The legalistic tradition, you know that Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, Maliki, the four major school of legalistic tradition Islam. Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, and Maliki. Just to know that there is no need of getting more detailed understanding about that. So then mystical discourse. What is mystical discourse? In every religion has mystical discourse. Mystical discourse focus on what? Some inner experience, some very poetic experience. Mystical discourse in Islam, there are so many Sufi traditions that problematize the very life of our life, everyday life, the relation between God and human being, achieving the supremacy, achieving the greater meaning in life. These very fundamental questions they address. So they aim the elimination of the divide between the God and human being. The elimination of the divide between human and God. They want to get closer and closer to God. So they annihilate the divide between human and God through certain practices. Islamic practices in Islamic mystical understanding. So they problematize, they address the divide between God and we come from the God and we will return to God. So in the life they can achieve a kind of closer to God by certain practices. So this is the basic concept. And the philosophical discourse. This is a very important debate which happened in around 12th century, 9th century to the 14th century period in Islam, classical period in Islam. There are two main philosophical discourses, Mu'tazilite and Ash'arite. Ash'arite already mentioned is a philosophical, it's a theological, mystical, metaphysical discourse as well as it's a philosophical discourse. Mu'tazilite, they are more focused on reason. They incorporate a lot of methods and methodologies from classical Greek philosophical traditions. Then they applied into Islamic tradition. So there was a antagonism against this group because they incorporated a lot of features from classical Greek traditions that contaminated Islamic traditions. So this was the difference. So now I am going back to the idea of sacred in Islam. The idea of sacred and the sacred in Islam. We know that the divide between the sacred and profane. Sacred is just opposite of the profane. In Durkheimian sense of the term, it's very different, like two bipolar opposites. Like sacred we have somewhere else and profane we have somewhere else. So in Islam, when it comes to Islam, the distinction is not very evident, but it's a blurry distinction. In philological studies, what is philological studies? The studies that advance through literature of Islam, text of Islam, that is philological studies. There are three levels of sacred in Islam. One is Qudsi or Muqaddas. It comes from the word QDS. This is Qudsi or Muqaddas, the transcendental God which is known as Allah. Allah is sacred. This is coming from a particular verse in Quran, Qudus verse. So Ayatul Kursi you can see everywhere in somewhere else in Muslim houses. They keep this Ayatul Kursi. This Qudsi comes from particular verse in Quran. In Haram also, Haram, the idea of Haram, the forbidden or protected place, Masjid al-Haramain. Masjid al-Haramain, you know the twin sacred cities of Mecca and Medina, the twin sacred cities of Islam, Mecca and Medina. So what is a Haram? These two places are known as Haramain, Haramain al-Sharifain, the sacred twin cities of Islam. These are sacred. So in what sense these places are sacred? Certain acts are forbidden in these places. And certain people are not allowed to enter into these places. And you can't enter without proper manners of dress and arm. these spaces. So the killing is not allowed in these spaces. Even it's a punitive killing like which happened in Saudi Arabia, that is not going to be held in these spaces. There are so many notions, so many instructions that can be done, acts that can be done and cannot be done in these spaces. So we can't have killing. There are some rules and regulations for actions. So you can't go without, ladies can't enter without proper dress in these spaces. So this is a dictums of religion, I'm saying. So the third notion of sacred is valaya or vali. It's come from the root word W-L-Y, vali, which means the patrons of Allah, dead or alive. Dead or alive. It can be a person who is dead or alive. So who is a vali? Saint. Sacred. We have a sacred space in the sense of the term, we have a sacred space in Nizamuddin. People go there and people give some offerings, give flowers and all, they tie some threads to fulfill their wishes. So in this sense of the term, the person can be alive or dead, both. So now I am repeating, now this is three notions of sacred. So as per this notion, the God in Islam is a simultaneous conjunction of immanence and transcendence. What is immanence and transcendence? Something immanent, which is accessible to very, very easily. God is very accessible to everyone very easily, and not very accessible very easily. It's very transcendent. So these two notions of sacred, notions of God, we can see. It's a conjunction. Both are the conjunctions. Like we can get the idea of sacred through wali. People make intercessionary prayer to God through some person, people. And there are people who oppose these practices. So in classical sense of the term, like it's a simultaneous conjunction of immanence and transcendence. So some people oppose, within Islamic tradition, they oppose this immanence, not transcendence. You can't pray, the God is not accessible through somebody. You can't go to, you can't visit Nizamuddin, you can't visit those places, those people who claims they have special access to sacred. So there are movements within Islam which start from very classical period itself, not very modern. We have scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah, and his theories were propounded later by people like Ibn Abdul Wahhab, who invented the state of Saudi Arabia. And this is a plural debate, not a very monotonous debate. The idea of God is a plural debate. There are different notions of access to God. You can have a direct access to God only, but you can have through somebody. People make intercessionary prayer. So, as per this recent theory, the constructive situational perspective of the sacred, the philological notions of sacred in Islam very reductive and very limited. So, these are the only spaces sacred in Islam? No. The philological definitions are very limited, are incapable of understanding the role of human agency that is inextricably involved in the production of sacred. So we have the anthropological studies now that question these very limited philological notions of sacred in Islam. So philological studies are not sufficient. Every masjid can be a sacred, not essentially this Haramain of Mecca and Medina. People can different notions of sacred. People keep objects and verses in their even private rooms. They have notions of sacred. Sacred is essentially taken out of these spaces. Sacred is not confined to these philological notions, but people. This is very Islamic notions. textual notions. But is that the only way of conceptualization in anthropological and other disciplines? No. We have other ways of understanding sacred. So sacred not essentially these three levels, but it can have different notions, different levels when we approach through anthropological theories. So the entanglements of sacred in the everyday life. That is what anthropology does and sociology does. So now I am shifting to another thing, like as per Islamic cosmology, what is God's first creation? Tell me please. What was the first creation of God? Heaven and earth. Somebody then, please, other opinion?
Universe.
Huh? Universe. And?
Light.
Huh?
Light.
What?
Light.
Oh, light.
Light.
Life. Oh, life. And then? What was light or
Light.
light? Okay, right answer. I got light answer very early. I didn't expect. Any other opinion? So I think, as per Islamic cosmology, what was God's first creation? It was Nur Muhammad or Light of Prophet. Light of Prophet Muhammad was the first creation of God. So what is this? The tree of prophets. You can see the first prophet here, Adam, and the last prophet, Muhammad, and so many other prophets. All these white prophets, Shajaratul Mubarak Anbiya, or the tree of prophets. The light of prophet is like God first created as per Islamic cosmology. The God created firstly. What was his first creation? It was the light of prophet. It was a light, not his body, but the light or soul, something like that. People interpret it differently. It was not, there is no consensus within the scholars itself. So it is a light, the Nur, the light was the first creation. And the light, God transferred this light. Just listen to me, please. God transferred this light into Adam. After creating Adam, God transferred this light of Muhammad into Adam. Then all the prophets and all the people, they carried what? The light within them. And lastly, the mother of Prophet Amina, who carried light, and finally to the body of Prophet. This is the, I just want to introduce the concept only. So Nur Muhammad is transferred to Adam, then by generation, by time, it came down to the real body of Prophet. I want to make it interesting. India is a sacred land of Islam, called honest. Just note this article, India as a sacred land of Islam, called honest. There is an interesting article, you please read it. You can get it on the internet. So, India is a sacred land of Islam. In general sense, I think, just keep this point in your mind. So, while we discuss about the reaching of Islam into India, where was the first site of Islamic site in India? How Islam reached in India? Anybody an answer? How Islam reached in India? Reached to India? Prophet. Lovely, please. Do the comeback at what time? Like around what time? That is very abstract time. There is a time, historically there is a time. 7th century, 6th century. There are different. There is no consensus among historians about that. There are difference of opinions. So don't make any consensus, please. There is no consensus about that. There are different times. There are people arguing different times. So there are two variants of coming to Islam into India. There are two major variants, like general understanding. There are two variants. One was land route, the other was sea route. One was the land route. The land route, people said that Islam came first by a land only. The military expedition by 8th, 7th century. One was this one. Please look at the map. Iraq, Persia, and to the Sindh region of contemporary South Asia. And the other was the sea route. See the sea route of 500 AD to 6000 AD. Islam came to different routes. The sea people, the coastal people, they argue that it was 7th century we got during the life of Prophet himself. And there is another variant. They argue that it came via land route, and there is no consensus at all. So some historians oppose this sea route claiming, and some historians no, it was not only through. Before even this military expedition, there were traders among the coast of in the coast of South Asia. There were different Islamic companions of Prophet. They came to this coast, and Islam propagated in these coastal entry ports very early period of time. So there is no historical consensus at all. Two different way of coming to Islam. So what is this? Adam speak. This is like now I want to introduce a concept. Like just focus to me. Like listen to me. There is a two major when it comes to like the global Islam, or say the whole community of Muslims. There are two major debates, like major regions: Islamic center and Islamic peripheries. What is Islamic center? Middle East and North Africa, MN region, MENA region, Middle East and North Africa. You can abbreviate that. And there is another region, Islamic peripheries. Islamic peripheries. So there is a Islamic periphery and Islamic center. Islamic center is what? Middle East and North Africa. And what is Islamic periphery? South Asia and Southeast Asia. Iran can be the mainland, but somewhere in the middle between these both center and periphery. But there is major differences, major geographical differences. Islamic center and Islamic peripheries. So, what is the importance of this Adam speak? This is Sri Lanka. You can see the Sri Lanka. What is the importance of? Anybody have any idea?
I have a question. Since Indonesia is considered to be the nation with the maximum Muslim population, Indonesia, will it come into the category of poor?
No, the number of the people is historically shift. The majority in terms of number of the population is not basis on the population. Even if the periphery has a lot of Muslims, you put all the just take the population of India that exceed the population of Muslim population of India that exceed the whole population of Middle East Muslims. So Indonesia is the biggest in terms of population than other country. But when it comes to as a region, it's not a geographical size or geographical in terms of not in terms of population, but in terms of some other like some regions that got early accessibility to Islam. First emerged Islam in this region, and this Middle East and North Africa. Then it shifted to there is no consensus in the periphery center. It is being posted. I am going to that. So the early discussion on Islam, the Muslim community across the region, there is a notion of center and periphery in the literature. So that has been questioned. So this is one of the discussions. The Adam speak. The Muslims of I think one of the debate like not very visible, but these mythological notions of Adam speak. What is the Adam speak? What is the importance of Adam speak in cosmology? As per Islamic tradition, Adam descended from Adam got Adam and Hawa. They got this is that's in the Jewish tradition and Christian tradition also. Adam and Hawa, they were expulsed from the paradise? So everybody knows it. It's a very, very perennial discussion. So it's a Semitic debate. Everywhere it is. So everybody knows enough discussion about that. So Adam speak. So Muslims believe that Adam descended to earth, landed to Adam speak in Sri Lanka, and simultaneously Buddhists and Hindus they believe that they have some special meaning to Adam speak. So this is Adam speak. Buddhists have different name. Sri Pada. What is Sri Pada? Sacred foot. It has a special meaning for Buddhists as well as Hindus. So this is Adam speak. It has special meaning. This is the map. The Adam peak is still you can see if you go to Sri Lanka. Adam peak is there. So this is the peak. People climb it. Buddhists climb it. Muslims climb it. So Hindus climb it. So it has a special meaning. But Muslims consider it as the point where Adam descended from heaven. We don't have any historical evidence. What's a mythical thing? So history is not relevant for believers. For historians, only is history relevant. So myth is very important for here. So you can see the Adam speak in a currency note. So colonial I think some denomination. I don't know. It's a colonial currency of Adam speak. It get incorporated into modern forms. So, footprint attributed to Adam, Shiva, and Buddha. As per Islamic tradition, it is the site of descent to earth after expulsion from the paradise. And now I am coming to a particular text. Shubhatul Marjan fi Adar in Hindustan. The choral rosary of Indian antiquities of Ghulam Ali or Azad. It's not Azad. Of Bilgram, completed in 1764, and he considered this myth of Adam speak in a detailed textual manuscript that you can get from India as a sacred land of Islam by Karl Anas, the eminent scholar of Islam. So, for him, he was narrating holiest place on earth after Mecca, realm of vigilancy of God. India, place of dawning of Muhammadan light. Then Adam was carried, Nur Muhammad or light of Muhammad, and he carried to earth, he landed in Adam's peak, and India is a place of dawning of Muhammadan light and the origin of eternal effusion. So now I am linking the concept of Nur Muhammad with Adam's peak. So the Muslims of peripheries, they have their own notions of domination over the center. We got the first light of Muhammad in Adam's peak, and Muhammadan light, the origin of eternal effusion to the land of India. India is a sacred. In that sense, India, Sri Lanka, our India is a chosen place of God. Chosen place of God. So after Mecca, this particular person is a poet, is a scholar of Islam. He was narrating India has a special significance, but it happened in 1764. It has a political. It might have some political. He was traveled from India to Mecca and he was studying there for a long time. And in order this particular text, the choral rosary of Indian antiquities, in that he narrates about Adam's peak and its relevance, and he projects India as a greater role in cosmology of Islam. So now I am elaborating the concept of dichotomies in the study of Islam in South Asia. Beyond center and periphery, modern diffusionism. So the diffusionist understanding of Islam, it emerged from a place in Middle East and Mecca and transferred to India and other places, peripheries. While transferring from periphery to center to periphery, it got lot of local tradition, local customs and all. So it contaminated. This is one of the arguments. So South Asian Islam is a peripheral Islam, a passive receiving end from the center. This is the conceptual discussion. South Asian Islam just a passive receiving end from the sender while transferring from it is historical process transferring from sender to periphery it is subjected to a lot of accretions incorporations from local customs. So while studying on the Orientalistic studies, they were constructing this dichotomy of center and periphery. They projected the Islam of the center as more authentic, and they projected the Islam of the periphery less authentic and contaminated by local customs. So this divide is a very early debate, and is also influenced by what? The center periphery dichotomy, which is happening in modernization theories and developmental theories. So you know already familiar about the economic discussions, like the underdevelopment of global south, metropole and periphery. So you're already familiar with that. So in that they were incorporating those theories into the study of religion, and they projected Islam of South Asia as less authentic and less what? And the central Islam, the Islam of the center, as more authentic and more pristine. So that debate has been challenged by contemporary anthropological and historical studies. So we know that literary and Greek traditions of Robert Redfield. So while we consider anthropology and sociology, so Imtiaz Ahmad was the first person who focused on this divide between Islamic law and Muslim practice in South Asia. So we have something law in something different, and we practice something different. So like Islam and Muslims. Is there a caste in Islam? Is there a caste? But is there a caste among Muslims? Yes. Why? This was some methodological questions. So why? What happened? Is it got from Hindus? So this was the question. This was the problem. So accretions of into the Islam, the Muslim practice, the difference between Islamic law and Muslim practice. Imtiaz Ahmad was focusing on this divide. So as in there is from this discussion we can see a coming up of a lot of series of conceptual dichotomies that in a way that repeat the early thing, like the folk and syncretic elements, authentic Islam and folk Islam and syncretic elements we can see. So like the Clifford Keys, the Islam observant, Islam of Morocco and Indonesia. So Clifford Keys was saying like Islam of Morocco is more like is close to Islamic laws, but Islam of Indonesia is a region located in Islamic periphery, and Morocco is a region. Where is Morocco in Africa, North Africa, MENA region. So he was comparing this Moroccan Islam and Indonesian Islam, and he was saying that Indonesian Islam is more like there are so many customary practices that goes against Islamic laws. So the difference between Moroccan Islam and Indonesian Islam. So even there is another debate. Binadas was later criticized of this Imtiaz Ahmad differences between practices and laws. So she was focusing text and context, the integration of sacred text into people's practices, folk theology and formal theology. She was focusing on the difference between folk theology and formal theology. The formal theology is what? The concepts that runs through the scholars, the ulamas. But people have also there is a notion of theological understanding and knowledge. They read and they understand it differently. It doesn't mean that folk practices are not less theological. They understand, they read it differently. So she was questioning Venadas and Francis Robinson. Just Google Francis Robinson's study. So anthropological criticism against dichotomies first variant. There are in understanding this was the earlier notions. Now I am making a rift here. So this was the major debate in the study of Islam in South Asia. So the central periphery debate, conceptual dichotomies, So, what is the current discussion which is going on among the scholars, among those who focus on Islam and Muslims? The current discussion on South Asian Islam that challenge these conceptual dichotomies, and they draw the multiplicity and differences circulations. There is no center and periphery. So they are challenging these notions of this periphery and center. You can't say that the Oriental notions are criticized. So you can't say that Saudi Arabian Islam is more pristine and more authentic in comparing with the Islam of anywhere in the periphery. So we can't make this value-laden judgments. So we can't put any Islam in the at the top in the hierarchy. We can't place any Islam in the lower in the hierarchy. So anthropological criticism against dichotomy is first variant, focusing on tension between little and great tradition. Not a harmonized tradition, but they focus on the little and great tradition. Anthropological criticism against dichotomy, this variant, it says that you people are focusing more on this little and great tradition, folk and scholars. So you can see in village Islam and urban Islam. Urban is more law-oriented, the formal elite Islam, and the village Islam is more focused on the lot of customary laws and all. This kind of is totally discredited because we can see a lot of saint worship in the urban centers of everywhere in South Asia. There will be a saint, there will be a dargah, a jaram everywhere. So you can't place any Islam and any this dichotomy empirically is not valid. You people, you Orientalists, you studied only text. You didn't go to the field. So anthropology draws from a lot of knowledge from the field, and they are criticizing what? Criticizing these dichotomies. So they take them substantial categories rather than provisional. So they're also saying that those people who take these dichotomies, they say that you can't say these categories are substantial, not already derived, not complete. The process is going on. Say the customary Islam and the formal Islam, that is not, there is no completion. It still is being made, it's discursive practices. So you can't have a substantial understanding. Islam is lively, is still being discussed everywhere. So there is the meaning and the understanding are already made, is ongoing tradition. So particular of certain practices, essentially South Asian. This is another criticism. Like they project the saint worship as essentially South Asian. It's not essentially South Asian. You can see saint worship even in MNA region, even in centers, especially before modernity, before the advance of Wahhabism and Reformism. You can see that. So saint worship is not essentially something South Asian. Not essentially South Asian, I'm saying. You can see somewhere else in Morocco, somewhere else everywhere in Middle East. Not some countries they demolished these centers of shrines. So they can another discussion consider certain practices as fluid, others are closed. For example, they're saying that saint worship, those kind of variants, Islamic variants, is more fluid. No, it's not like that. Everything, the formal Islamic law also is fluid. They change, they reinterpret the text, they come up with something different that goes against the earlier understanding. So we have this everything fluid and everything moving forward. They consider reformism as recent addition to South Asia. So now they're saying that Islam of they romanticize the Islam of South Asia. We have the Sufi traditions. No, not like that. Like the reformism also was there even in Mughal period. So it's not essentially something recent addition, but it was there already. So empirical studies, people shift in practices more complex, negotiate, compromise, and move between. So people are not fixed into these categories. They move some categories to categories. Like the empirical beings are more complex than textual understanding, or anthropological studies shows that it's more complex. You can't put people into categories. You can't fix them into a particular category. So second variance of scholarship against monotonous notions of South Asian Islam. So the earlier variant they will focus more on what? Like the categories are not fixed, it's connected. And the second variance of scholarship against monotonous notions of South Asian Islam. So here they are focusing more on South Asian Islam as plural tradition. So what was one of the flaws of central periphery debate? While scholars projecting Islam of South Asia as something equally competitive to Islam of center, they articulated a monotonous, a single homogeneous Islam of South Asia against the Islam of center. So while doing that, they missed a lot of different traditions of different Islamic traditions that we can see within the region of South Asia. So South Asian Islam is very plural. We have different communities, coastal communities, we have inland communities. So the Islam of South Asia is very plural. Not you can't generalize just as a Sufi Islam or Shia Islam or Sunni Islam. The communities have long past of Islamic tradition. So they are focusing on different traditions of Muslims. So while focusing only on the land Islam, which I said the land route and sea route. So most of the scholars they focus early on the Muslims of the land. So the sea route the Muslims have this history of sea route. They are very minimal. The number are very minimal. So most of the scholars they focused only what? The Muslims of the center of within the region of South Asia. So they missed a lot of Muslim communities who lives all across the South Asian coast. So Islam across South Asian littorals, relative independence. They have relative independence. I am giving an example of Marakayar community of Tamil Nadu. Probably you might not know the community. And Mapida communities of Southwest India, Kerala. So this is just examples only. These coastal communities have some commonalities and some differences. These coastal communities, even there are some commonalities and there are some differences within them. So the coastal entry ports, the medieval port cities like Calicut, there are long history of Muslim coming and going. So what are the general differences and unity? So hybridity of forms vernacular text. Vernacular text is one of the forms of cultural formations. The vernacular text, network of itinerant scholars, Sufis and merchants. So international Islamic ecumene, commonalities in littoral societies. It's a Indonesian Islamic ecumene is a scholarly term that denotes the Muslims live in these islands and coast of South Asia and Southeast Asia. So Islamic scholars like Ang Sang Ho, who worked extensively on these communities of South Asian littorals. So there are some commonalities. Itinerant scholars, the scholars move with merchants. The scholars who moved with merchants, the Sufis they traveled in the ships from one region to another. The Sufis were there, the merchants were there, and scholars. The predominance of Safi school. Just levels of discourse, legalistic discourse, Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, and Maliki. So in this littoral Muslims, the dominance of what? Sufi scholars and Sufis and merchants and Shafi school. Shafi school was one of the legal traditions of Muslims like Hanafis. Shafi, the predominance of Shafi school is prevalent these littorals. So they are not hermetically sealed. like they have, as they located into this spot, it doesn't mean that they were confined in these regions only. People were coming and people were going from these littoral communities, and they are not hermetically sealed. What is this? The forms and practices, like we have great Mughal architecture. So while we compare the cultural formations, example is architecture. So architecture is very different, very different. This is a mosque of located in Calicut. It's known as Mishkal Mosque, built by a Persian man. Mishkal, known as Mishkal, and he was a merchant, and he was the patron of this mosque. And see the differences of these coastal mosque and all. So in coastal regions there are different cultural formations. So this is an example. And what is this? What is this? Ship. Where literally it's a ship, but it's not a ship. The text, there is a detailed text here. The text narrates something different. This is not a ship. How many of you believe? Not a ship, but what? It's a body of a believer. It's a body of a believer, of a Muslim, that travel from this world to next world. It has a very perilous travel. I'm just putting an example from the field of this littoral Islam to show that it's different forms of cultural movements. So, like the forms and practices, like in terms of differences, like when we compare with the Islam of the mainland. So, the Muslims of the littorals, they have some cultural differences, some different movements. So, they have very different forms of educating people about the dictates of religion. So, this is the men who have ordered this image have written that like this, the body of a believer. This is a body of a believer that sail through a perilous ocean that will encounter with a lot of difficulties in this life. People will take you from the path of God to the path of Satan, and then he will put into the hell, and you won't get the paradise. So to get paradise, you have to move in a particular way that will take ultimately to paradise. This kind of religious doctrine. Just example, vernacular tradition. What is this in terms of letter, like Arabic, Urdu? Huh? It's not Arabic, not Urdu, not Persian, not Pashto, not Malayalam. But this is a script. This is a form of script that can be seen everywhere in South Asia, these littorals. This is a Malayalam written in a modified Arabic script. This is a Malayalam written in a modified Arabic script. You can read as Malayalam, but written is Arabic. So this is a Arabic Tamil account and hadith collection. This is a Arabic Tamil written in Arabic script, not Arabic script, Tamil written in by using a modified Arabic script. The script between Malayalam, Arabic Malayalam and Arabic Tamil is different. That is the difference within the region of littorals. So the first verse, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, that first verse of Quran, that is at the top. The rest is pure Malayalam written in a modified Arabic script. The similar way you can see, this is Arabic Tamil, something else, and this is also different. So now scholars are shifting to cultural translation or transculturation explanatory metaphor. So we have this deconstruction of central peripheral debate and dichotomies. And what is the running debate now among the scholars of South Asian Islam? Now they are focusing on cultural translation or transculturation perspective, say explanatory metaphor. So we have this, we don't have, now people have already discredited the analytical value of central periphery and dichotomies and all. We have good Muslim and we have bad Muslims, and we have Muslims of the rural and Muslims of urban and Muslims of ulama and Safi and Shufi. So many differences and so many dichotomies. No, these are not relevant for study. Now people are shifting into cultural translation or transculturation as an explanatory metaphor. So people are focusing on Islamic and Islamic, Hindu, Indic scholars like Marsh Watson, Bruce Lawrence, and David Gilmartin and all. So these scholars, they are focusing on what? So in empirically the analytical values of these terms are very different. So we have Islamicate. What is Islamicate? Islamicate is a term invented by Marshall Hodgson. So we have like this is Islamicate, not Islamic. So this is the script is not Islamic but Islamicate. So this is the difference. Like Muslims have, if we denote something that is associated with Muslims, that not essentially Islamic, but we can see among Muslims. That is what Islamicate, not Islamic, but generally observed upon Muslims. That is what Islamicate. The term is invented by Marshall Hodgson. It's a very useful term, and they have extensively elaborated later by Bruce Lawrence and David Gilmartin. And forms are not unnatural admixture, focus on, and there is a, these are the recent thing, like they are focusing on the syncretic debate, the limitations of syncretism, syncretic paradigm, syncretic model. What is syncretic model? What is syncretism? What is syncretism? You are supposed to know that syncretism. What does it mean? What is syncretism?
Something that's concentrating only on one field or not across fields of study.
Is that syncretism? That might be true, but what is this? Mixing, hybridity. That is what syncretism in scholarly studies. Syncretism is what? South Asian Islam is often projected as a syncretic Islam. The mixing of two traditions, Hindu and Muslims. Then we get something other than that. That is what? Syncretism. We have syncretic traditions. Muslims follow a lot of Hindu customs. They incorporate. It can be seen that can be a syncretic. Like people have incorporated architectural elements from Hindu temples. Then they have built a mosque like this. This is what syncretic. But syncretism is relevant. Is not very relevant. Don't give much analytical value. As it focus, there are some limitations for syncretic paradigm. So, what are the limitations of syncretic paradigm? That presuppose two pure forms. This is a presumption of that made by these scholars. Like there are two pure things. Then it comes and it brings something new. And by looking at these things, the South Asian forms and practices become inauthentic. It become a mixture of two things, and we get something. If we get like water and milk, then what we get? It's neither milk and nor water. We get something other than that. That is what syncretism. Syncretism as an explanatory metaphor, it has a lot of limitations. One of the limitations is that it presupposes the existence of two pure forms. Even there is no notion of pure Islam is already discredited. So you can't have a Islam and an Hindu, then you can mix. Even Hindu custom is also a lot of admixture of different traditions. So you can't have this mixing of both and all. That is not sufficient to explain empirical phenomena. So presuppose two pure form essentialize the passivity. Like South Asian Islam, like it always is a passive. So cultural veneer, what is cultural veneer? That a thin layer of something that exists over something. A thin layer of Hindu material that can be observed upon some Islamic thing. So that kind of thing is not sufficient to explain. So the cultural veneer, biological model, evolutionism and all, in a way like people move from syncretic to more authentic Islamic paradigm. That also presupposes this model. So neither Hindu nor Islamic not explain the process but the result. They focus more on the product but not the process. The process of its the way it is made. They are not focusing the process but the result. So it challenged the bounded categories. So recent understanding, recent scholars, they focus on the bounded categories. The notion of the sociological, anthropological. So bounded categories. Categories are not bounded. It's fluid. It's very blurry. Social categories or identities are more fluid, not essential. Extended contact between culture and its result transculturation. The invention of this is a summing up of the invention of mythic past is an active in the present time. National and regional frames are involved in this making of myth. So the process is a political process. This is another this is a Chakravarti farming, a tradition concerning the introduction of Islam in Malabar. Malabar is a region southwest India, Kerala. This is Kisar Chakravarti farming, a tradition concerning the introduction of Islam in Malabar. As per this tradition, this is a Arabic material got from British Library, and Y. Fredman, a very old scholar, and he have written this, he translated the manuscript. As per this manuscript, the Muslims of Kerala, they argue that Islam reached in Malabar during the life of Prophet just after Hijrah. So these kind of myths are there, but as Fredman analysis, these are recent construction. These are recent construction, don't have any historical validity. Thank you.
Thank you.